The School Mouse by Dick King Smith, Part 4. Chapter 7, in which Flora sees a ghost. There is not a mouse alive anywhere in this school, not one, the headmistress had said at the staff meeting. She was wrong. What's more, on the very next day there were two. One, of course, was Flora, and the other belonged to Tommy, the naughtiest boy in the second grade class. Christmas is a time when people are sometimes given unsuitable presents. Often, these are pets. Everyone knows that many puppies are bought by the wrong people for the wrong reasons and soon after discarded, often cruelly. Lesser pets can suffer the same fate, and Tommy had been given a pet mouse as a Christmas present. For a few days it was a novelty for him, and he quite liked feeding it and watching it working away at the little treadmill that was fitted in its cage. But then he became bored with it. The pet mouse was bored too. That's why it spent its time in the treadmill. And no doubt in due course Tommy would have neglected it. But then he had a brilliant idea. He remembered the disgust that the headmistress had shown upon finding mouse droppings on her register. And I bet she's scared stiff of mice, he thought. And the other teachers are too, with a bit of luck. I'll take my mouse into school and let it go on her desk. I bet she'll have 40 fits. So it was that on the very first day after vacation that Tommy brought his mouse with him, secretly of course, for pets were not allowed in school. He brought it in a little cardboard box, which he hid in the locker where he kept his books. He did not tell any of his friends. All morning he sat imagining this scene. He would wait until after lunch, till after the midday break. Then, when they came in from the playground, he would take the mouse out of its box and let it go on the headmistress's desk, just a moment before she entered the classroom. Okay, so he'd be punished. He didn't care. It would all be worth it just to see her face and hear her scream. But as everyone knows, the best laid schemes of mice and men don't always quite work out. When Tommy came in from the playground at 1 o'clock and hurried to open the little cardboard box, it was empty. In one side of it a mouse-sized hole had been gnawed. And that afternoon Tommy sat waiting hopefully, his eyes darting about the second grade classroom. The mouse must be around somewhere. Things might still work out all right if only he could spot it and catch it, at afternoon break perhaps. But there was no sign of it. Maybe it'll turn up tomorrow, Tommy said to himself. And if it doesn't, what do I care? I'm tired of the stupid thing anyway. Neither on the next day or on those that followed was there any sign of Tommy's mouse. But Flora was getting into the swing of school. The bookshelf was proving to be a great success, both as a home and as a vantage point. By peeping out at various spots between the loosely stacked books, Flora the first grader enjoyed a much wider range of vision than had Flora the kindergartner, stuck in the hole in the wall. Now, as well as surveying the teacher's desk, she could also see what a number of children were doing at their work tables. There were more snatches of new books for her to read, and by watching carefully during math lessons, Flora came gradually to understand the symbols that stood for her different numbers. Also, there was a large calendar on the opposite wall, with the dates in very big red figures, and by studying these, Flora learned to count, but not, of course, beyond 31. While the children were in school, Flora was as happy as could be, busy with her lessons. And at playtime, or during the lunch hour, when the classroom was empty, she would leave the bookshelf and scuttle about, climbing onto the tables and studying any book that had been left open. In this way, she learned a number of things not normally known to mice. For example, she read that the earth went round the sun, that David slew Goliath, that Paris was the capital of France, and that Henry VIII had 6 wives. She did not understand the full meaning of these interesting facts, but she stored them away in her memory in case They should come in handy one day. Food, now that she was the only schoolmouse in the place, was much easier to come by. She soon learned the order in which the cleaning ladies did the hall and the various classrooms after school, and she usually contrived to nip round ahead of them, picking up the crumbs and bits of food that the children had dropped. It was only when the school was empty of people and night fell that Flora was less than comfortable. Partly she was lonely. She had always been independent by nature, but she found herself missing her parents and wondering about the 9 new mouseskins she had never as yet set eyes on. Where were they all now? Partly she was afraid as she thought about her own 9 brothers and sisters, all dead and gone, and particularly of sweet William, who had died in the very classroom in which she now lived. One stormy night of thunder and lightning, when the wind was howling around the old school, Flora sat remembering his horrible groans. What if the ghost of sweet William should appear to me? She thought. She peered out between her books, and as she did so, a flash of lightning lit up, just for a second, the first grade classroom. But in that second, Flora saw clearly the figure that even now was crossing the floor towards her. It was the figure of a mouse whose eyes shone blood red in the glare of light, a mouse whose coat was not the gray-brown of other ordinary mice, but a pure, ghastly, ghostly white. Chapter 8, in which Buck moves in. Flora let out a squeal of terror. "Keep away from me, sweet William, keep away!" she squeaked, and a grumpy voice answered, "Who are you calling sweet William?" "Do ghosts talk?" thought Flora. "Are you a real mouse?" she asked. "Of course I am," said the grumpy voice. "But you're white." "So what? Lots of pet mice are white." "Oh," said Flora, "I didn't know." "I dare say there are a lot of things you don't know," said the white mouse. Flora was rather hurt by this. "I bet I know more than he does," she thought, for her nose now told her she was addressing a male. She remembered something she had learned that very afternoon. "I know the name of the mother of the queen," she said. "Do you?" "No," said the white mouse. "What is it?" "The queen mother." The white mouse made no reply to this piece of information. Another lightning flash showed Flora that he had turned his back on her and was sitting up and cleaning his whiskers. He is rather rude, Flora thought. After a while he said, "Well, what's your name?" "Flora, what's yours?" "Mother always called me Buck," said the white mouse. "Buck," thought Flora. "That's silly. That's like a pig calling her son Boar, or a cow calling hers Bull." "Why?" she said. "Because I was the only boy among 6 of us. She gave my 5 sisters pretty names, but she just called me Buck, and Buck has stuck. Worse luck." He doesn't sound very happy, Flora thought. She ran down the wall beneath the bookshelf and approached the stranger. "You don't sound very happy," she said. "I'm not," said Buck. "Nor would you be in my place. A couple of weeks ago I was living comfortably in a pet shop, warm and clean and well fed, and then I was picked out, held up by my tail I'll have you know, and given to a stupid boy. I could tell by the way he handled me that he knew nothing about animals, and then to cap it all he put me in a box and brought me to this place." "And you escaped?" said Flora. "Yes, and I've been trying to keep out of sight since. At least I'm free. The last thing I want is for that stupid boy to find me again. By the way, you're the first mouse I've ever met here." "I'm the only mouse in the school," said Flora. "So this is a school, is it?" said Buck. "Yes," said Flora. "It's a place where they teach young human beings to read and write and do math and stuff like that." "Reading, writing, math? It's all Greek to me," said Buck. "But it explains why there are so many of the noisy creatures around. It's a wonder that none of them has spotted me yet. Especially as you're white," Flora thought. The storm had moved away while they were talking, and thunder distant now. and the wind's howl had dropped to a mere humming. Through the tall windows of the first-grade classroom came the first light of dawn, and Buck ceased his grooming and turned his pink eyes on Flora. "That's better," he said. "Now I can see you properly. My night sight is very poor, I'm afraid." "It's the same with all us pink-eyed whites, you know. We're none of us blessed with good vision." Flora, whose sight was excellent by day or night, immediately felt sorry for him. And that was not all she felt. "How handsome he is," she thought, "so large and sleek. And those wonderful red eyes, they make me so quite weak at the knees. And that gleaming coat of his, white as the driven snow, how beautiful it is, and how dangerous. It can only be a matter of time before he will be recaptured," she said to herself. "So conspicuous is he, and then I shall lose him, and I don't want to." While she was thinking all these thoughts, Buck continued to stare at her without speaking. Then he asked, "Why do you live by yourself in the school?" "I'm a school mouse," Flora said. "Yes, but why are you alone?" said Buck. "I mean, I should have thought you'd have had lots of admirers, pretty girl like you." "No," said Flora. "Oh," said Buck. There was quite a long silence as the two so different-looking mice crouched on the classroom floor in broad daylight now. At last Flora spoke. "Buck," she said. "Yes?" "I may call you Buck." "Of course, Flora. Are you planning to stay here in the school?" "Certainly I am," said Buck. "You, who have been free all your life to go where you like and do what you please, can't imagine the joy of freedom to someone like me. My life so far has been one of imprisonment, but no longer." "Then we must make plans," said Flora. "People will be coming into the school before long, and they mustn't see you." Then she had a thought. Recently she had come upon a natural history book open at a page about camouflage. She did not quite know how to pronounce the word, but she could see what it meant from the pictures. One was of a tiger, its striped coat blending into the jungle background, and one of a drab-colored bird, almost invisible on its nest among a tangle of tussocks. "If you were to get your coat really dirty," she said, "you wouldn't be nearly as noticeable." "No," said Buck. "No, Flora, I'm sorry, but I draw the line at that. I have always prided myself on being well turned out. The slightest speck of dirt on my coat upsets me to no end. I can't bear a scruffy mouse." "You wouldn't think much of father then," thought Flora, as she watched Buck fall once more to grooming himself. "You'll have to be hidden then," she said, "for the whole of the school day. We must find somewhere safe, and quickly too. Let me think." He must go underground, she thought, under the floorboards somewhere, as mother and father did in the staff room. There, perhaps? No, it was too far away. She must have him close. Surely there must be somewhere in this very classroom. Flora began to run about, searching, and almost at once luck was with her. In one corner of the first-grade classroom stood a sink where the children washed up their brushes and pots after painting lessons. A hole had been cut in the floor to take the drain pipe that ran down from the sink, and around the edge of this hole there was ample room for a mouse to get down. Flora got down and found that there was a comfortable space beneath, where Buck might be undisturbed, save for the occasional gurgle of running water. "Quick!" she called. "Down here, Buck." "Now," she said, when he had found her, "you'll just have to stay here all day and not make a sound. Have a good sleep, I would. I'll come and fetch you at the end of school." "But Flora," said Buck, "aren't you going to stay here with me?" "No," said Flora. "You must remember, Buck, that I am a school mouse. I have an awful lot to learn." "I don't quite understand," said Buck. There was a distant noise as the front door of the school was unlocked. "I can't explain now," said Flora hurriedly. "I've got to go, or I shall miss my lessons." Buck's eyes glowed red in the darkness under the floorboard. "I shall miss you," he said softly.